it could be a laminate core of plywood, or it could be boards, either way.
So Mr. Stefan and Mr. Ty are going to clean these up really good, seal them up against further deterioration from the weather, and put them back in the boats when they're done. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Tim Nesmith, Ship Superintendent of the USS KIDD, and we are in Dulac Shipyard checking on our whaleboats that are under restoration, while KIDD is just across the bayou in Thoma-Sea Shipyard. And we're with Mr. Stefan Berg, who is the head of Dulac Shipyard. Mr. Stefan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Tim.
What have you guys been working on with the whaleboats? Kind of bring us up to speed if you wouldn't mind.
All kinds of stuff on both of them. So we've gotten the hulls stripped down. We've taken out the seat boards and back boards that were all rotten.
And all of that is wood that was added when we first got the whaleboats. They were not original because these were originally fiberglass boats.
Yes.
Okay. For those that are not familiar with it, these boats came to us in the 1980s when the heavy cruiser Albany decommissioned, and these boats came off of Albany. They're fiberglass build as original, and wooden whaleboats from the World War II era are not that easy to find. And so our ship superintendent, Tim Rizzuto, acquired these early on in KIDD's restoration, got them down to Baton Rouge, courtesy of the U.S. Navy, and then began the process of mocking them up with wood attachments to give the appearance of a World War II era wooden whaleboat.
We also removed the rubber rails. They're on the sides. They were made out of wood. This is the captain's gig. It had a pipe frame made out of steel pipe and a tarp stretched over it to keep the captain dry. We removed that frame because we saw some rust happening in these joints here, in these sockets. Normally if you see it coming out the top, it's bad in the bottom because it holds water in that joint. To fix it, you have to take it apart. You got to beat it up. So we pulled the frame off. Sure enough, the pipe that extends down into the brass sockets was rusty, so we started sandblasting that so that we can repair the pieces, replace some pieces that's missing, and then blast and prime and paint it to protect it from further decay. This particular boat, we found a soft spot on the deck up here where the plywood core had, or it could be a laminate core of plywood, or it could be boards, either way, a wooden core with fiberglass on top. So that was rotten, it gave way. That will need to be repaired. Now, originally we were thinking about sanding the paint off of the hull with sanders, grinders. But because of the extent of what we could see was rotten, we decided to use sand, a sandblasting method that we had developed here with reduced pressure and a certain type of sand, so that we could strip away all of the paint and filler and expose any soft spots like you see here. That's the exact reason for doing it. We want to expose anything that is not structurally sound so that we can repair it properly and it can last a long time. Here's another spot right here. It's pretty bad. And obviously, of course, up on that front deck is why we would do something like that. We want to uncover that so we can fix it, so that we don't have someone stand on the deck and actually fall through and hurt themselves. Now, on this boat, we've removed this upper rail, which was built with a laminate of wood. Not the original, but this would be a repair that was done somewhere along the line, and it was done improperly, in my opinion. The wood that was used is a wood that doesn't hold up well in the weather, and so you can see it's rotten, and it was done in a laminate. It was built up with a big board, then progressively smaller as it goes out. The problem is getting the wood to bend in this shape. The original boat would have had a wooden rail, but to do it in the original fashion, you need a steam chamber and you have to bend the wood into that shape using a steam chamber. It's really costly to do that. So what I suggested was to use cellular PVC boards to build it up in progressively narrower form and then sand it so it looks like the rail on that boat. It'll look the same, but it'll be much stronger and it'll never rot again. The mistake made with this material here is they used short pieces, and as the pieces started to rot, they just popped open. Because this is a pretty tight bend right here, and in the back also, a very tight bend. It's hard to follow that contour. Cellular PVC is much better at doing something like that, and it doesn't rot. So with this boat, we are in the process of stripping it. Watch the nails. If you look in here, you can see where the seating was in this boat. He just started popping them away and the screws are all rusted in place. That's got to be all cut out. So that is next. And then pulling these rails off of the side here and building new rails out of PVC. That part is going to be next. It will need to be sandblasted in the same way we did this hull so that we can strip all of the built up paint off of it and get down to the original structural stuff, get all the old built up paint from over the years. We need to get that off and get it back to original. As we see any rot anywhere in this boat, we'd get back with Tim and discuss how we're going to go about repairing it. But the whole reason for using the sandblast method is to uncover structural deficiencies, any rotten wood. So when these boats were built, they did use wood, even though they're fiberglass, they did use wood as a core to build off of, you know. So you would build like these transverse bulkheads here. You would build the hull and then you would drop in a transverse bulkhead, which is typically made out of plywood, and then you would layer fiberglass, resin, and cloth or mat over that to get it structurally sound and to tie it into the fiberglass hull. So if you have any problems with the wooden core, then it's not structurally sound anymore. That needs to be taken care of. Any of the steel on the boat, for instance, this mounting eye where you lift the boat, that's all going to get sandblasted, primed, and top coated with urethane or epoxy, whichever they'd like on it. I don't know what their spec is calling for just yet. The rear handrail, safety rail that was on the stern of this boat is a little bit different from the arrangement that was on this boat. So to keep the boats looking similar, we're going to have to modify the rear frame. That's off right now, so that the boats look more like one another and be period correct. Now, through research, we've determined that the rudder that was on this boat is more period correct. However, it was rotten. So we're going to build a new rudder for this boat, and it'll look like it did before. But this boat had a rudder that was from a later time period. So we're going to build two rudders actually that'll look the same. It'll look like the rudder that was on this boat. And if anybody remembers, it's the rudder that came down and had like a little round kick out on it. That one is more period correct. That's in that photo that Ty showed you earlier.
Right.
So both boats will have the same looking rudder.
So these are the two rudders. This one was pulled off of the captain's gig. That's the one that would have the canvas covering on it, and the one that Mr. Stefan was talking about had that little raised edge to meet up with the canvas awning. As you can see, it looks older. It has a wood structure to it with metal fittings. And this is closer to the World War II appearance of the whaleboat rudders. This is either steel or aluminum. It looks like steel to me, based on the rust that we see on the attachments and the rust that you see through the rudder. But this would have been much later on in the Cold War era. You can also see the tiller for steering connected here. And there would have been a similar tiller for the older rudder. But this is not what we're going to be replicating. And as I mentioned earlier, the difference between the two comes from Tim Rizzuto and our volunteers going out back in the 80s into the reserve fleet while all these World War II ships were still in the reserve fleet and scrounging what they could find. They apparently only could find one wooden World War II appearing rudder. So they grabbed something else that they could put on the whaleboat so it's not sitting there without a rudder. And that's what you find a lot with museum ships. They're going out and they're finding what they can to use to give an appearance until they can find the proper period correct piece of equipment that they're using. And in the meantime, they talk about, well, this is the rudder, but this is not the proper rudder, and they educate. And that's what we've been doing for all those years. So after Mr. Stefan and Mr. Ty are done, instead of having to talk about what it should look like, we're going to be talking about what it does look like. And that's part of the reason why we're working with Dulac on the whaleboats. So all you rudder fetishists out there, be prepared. There's 2 more rudders coming besides the one over at Thoma-Sea.
Now there's some differences between this boat and that boat that you shouldn't copy on this boat.
Right.
And in my opinion, that would be the combing that we have on the gig here. The way the cover is made, the tarp doesn't come all the way down and seal to this surface here, the deck. It's up a little ways. So to keep the waves from splashing and shooting through onto the captain or whoever he has in here with him, they built a combing on here that you don't have on that boat. So that shows you if you see a boat like this with a combing on it, that's obviously the gig.
That's the captain's gig.
That's the gig, because they're trying to keep the splashed water out. This is crew. I guess they figure they can get wet, no big deal. They used to getting wet.
Yep.
That boat has no cover over the top.
Right.
So they don't have a combing on it to keep people dry. This one does.
Perks of command.
This is the gig. It's the one that gets all the fancy stuff.
There you go.
It gets a deck on the front where that one doesn't. So the boats will be as identical to one another as they can be. There's some things that will not be the same.
Right.
Combing in the deck, just 2 of them.
This is why I recruited Mr. Stefan for this job. He knows fiberglass boats and he does his research. And when I interviewed him for another film, which we haven't yet put out, about an LCVP that he's working on, he made a statement that just stuck with me, and I ran back to Baton Rouge and I found the guy. His statement was, you can only be original once.
It's only new one time.
It's only new one time.
It's only original one time. So a lot of work we do is actually restoration.
Yeah.
We take something apart, and some people don't like to see something taken apart because they want it whole. But in a lot of cases, you got to take it apart, you got to beat it up. It's going to look bad in the interim, but you got to get to the root of the problem. If you don't stop the rust is going to eat that original part. Now, can we build another part that looks just like it? Yeah, it's what we do. We're fabricators. I can build you another part that looks just like that piece up there on the deck. It's not original. It's only new one time, and it's only original one time. So we try to stop the decay, bring it back to where it was, back to as new as we can get it. That's restoration, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Is trying to save the old stuff. We're not looking to throw stuff away and build new stuff.
Right.
We got plenty of new stuff. We want to fix the old stuff and preserve it. That's really the point. You know,
Fantastic.
So you'll look at the hull and you'll see areas that have all these little holes knocked in it. Oh my gosh, he knocked holes. Yeah, we're trying to find the soft spots. We're actually trying to fix it. We don't want that opening up. We don't want somebody stepping on that deck up there and falling through and breaking a leg. So this is this is really how you need to do restoration. Sometimes you got to break a few eggs.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it looks a little rough in the interim, but it's worth it in the end. You're really looking to fix it right. Fix it once, fix it right.
There you go. Mr. Stefan, I know you have to hit the road for an appointment.
I do.
Thank you for spending the time with us.
Thank y'all for coming out.
And you said Ty, your superintendent for the yard,
yes,
is across the yard where the engines are.
Yes.
If it's okay with you, we're going to go bother Ty for a moment and take a look at the engines.
Sure.
And then we're going to head back
I don't know
to
if he's going to
Thoma-Sea.
like that camera much. But just point it in his face.
There you go. That's what it would do. Thank you, Mr. Stefan. We'll see you next time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Let's go see the engines. Mr. Stefan's on his way. Mr. Ty is camera shy, but he opened up the shed here, and we have the 2 engines that have been removed from each whaleboat. And what they're going to do, you can see, they look pretty rough, even though they had a cowling that was put over it. And during our field days, during the 2011s, 20-teens, Chad Williams, one of our volunteers, created some wooden frames to go completely around them, which they would have had back in the day, that the cowling sits on, and that has protected them, but they are pretty rough. So Mr. Stefan and Mr. Ty are going to clean these up really good, get them taken care of, and seal them up against further deterioration from the weather, and put them back in the boats when they're done. Put them under the cowlings, have a housing around them to protect them, and they will be ready for display for you to see whenever you come on board the ship. No, we will not be getting the whaleboats operational. These engines would need a lot of work, and there's really no benefit to having them up and running. We are high and dry half the year, so we don't want to lower them over the side and then, have them end up sitting in the mud. And the Mississippi River is not really a river that you want to go joyriding on. So no, these will not be made operational. We know that other ships like USS Slater does have an operational whaleboat, but we're not going that track, at least not at this point in time. So that's our engines. I hope you've enjoyed this video about our whaleboats, their restorations, past and present. Remember, like, share, and subscribe to follow along with us, and hit that notification bell so that you know whenever we drop a new video. The USS KIDD Veterans Museum is a non-funded state agency that receives no regularly scheduled state or federal funding. You can help make KIDD better than the bare minimum by going and visiting USSKIDD.com and pressing that donate button. Every little bit helps, trust me. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.